So thank you, first of all, for coming. On behalf of SVAMA, specifically Shannon Ryan and Jane Cordingley, and ASAP, the Silicon Valley chapter, my cohort John Soper, many members of the board who are in the group, it is our pleasure to give you a joint event. We've got one of the longest titles in the world. I'll read it off for you. It's the Transformation in Partner Marketing, how digital platforms, ecosystems, and customer buying habits are not only changing the game, but they're changing at the same time and in highly unpredictable ways. So we wanted to bring this event together with a unification of two groups, one of which works heavily from a business orientation, which would be SVMA in terms of how you market from a discipline perspective as well as a technology perspective, but the two in tandem. And for ASAP, which looks at the role of technology from a business model level, from a market-making level, and as I said before, when we say transformation, it might be one of the few times when we are feeling a kind of understatement, particularly here. It is an understatement, particularly here in the Silicon Valley. So as a result, we're going to talk about this in various facets that I'm going to comment on in just a few moments. Before we do that, if we could click to the second slide. For many of you, you've seen this term in the email invites and otherwise on Game Changer. And for many of you, I think this is the first time you're coming to the Game Changer. What we like about this event is twofold. It is a series of events that began, as you'll see in the slide, the first one being November of last year, the second one being March of this year, and the third one being tonight. A series of events where we said there is an interrelated theme going on here. And we need to, you can't accomplish a discussion, an open discussion on this kind of multi-layered based change in one event. But you can if you do a series of events. So we opened up in November and we talked about the role of the platform. You're hearing about it in various ways with respect to Facebook, Apple, Google, and Amazon. And a couple of the panelists who you'll meet later in just a few moments were joining us for that event. The second one went straight into the business strategy realm, and that was in March. And we talked about how our ecosystems and corporate strategy becoming in need of being thought of together because of the degree of change, because of the degree of flexibility you gain when you design a digital go-to-market value chain. And we heard from, again, Cisco, Steve Steinhilber talking about how you get operational control points in that new ecosystem and you gain economic advantage out of that. Tonight, as I mentioned before, we're trying to bring together a discipline view, marketing as a discipline, and how a lot of the rules of marketing still stand, but they need to be thought of in a very different context, a fast-moving context, a context where history is not an indicator of future. So we're going to get into that. And then I'll close with this in terms of the next Game Changer series, which will begin in the fall. We believe it needs to be cutting edge. So this is the second thing we like about it. We like to talk about it in a cutting edge form, not just in terms of what happened in the last 6 months, not in the last 6 weeks, but what happened that week that evidences the discussion we're having, for example, tonight. So you'll hear us talk about things that have happened, i.e. what's happening at the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference this week that talks about the convergence of marketing, sales, new product development, etc. And so to that point, whether you do it by LinkedIn, by Facebook, by personal conversation, we want to know topics that you want us to get into. These take a little while to prepare for, but they are a joy to prepare for, and we look forward to doing more with you beginning this fall. So with that, before we get into the core of the event itself, we wanted to do a proper introduction of ASAP, the Silicon Valley chapter, for those of you, particularly from the SV AMA side, who've not heard about us, and then vice versa. We'll have Shannon come up and give the folks, particularly from ASAP, a little bit more information about SV AMA. And at the very end, you'll hear this is not a one and done thing. We have another event in mind in the latter part of the summer as a way to build momentum together. So with that, John.
Thank you, Nimma, and thank you all for coming. It's great to see some old friends and acquaintances here and to have met some new ones in the last hour, and I hope to be meeting many more after this session and as we go on to other meetings that I hope we will all gather for. So I wanted to say a few words about ASAP before we got going. We'll try and keep it short, but just a personal story. When I came to Silicon Valley, I was focused on the alliance profession and related collaborative and partnering functions and so forth. It wasn't until around 2005 that I discovered ASAP, and it was just tremendous. It was an organization, it's the only organization I know of that was designed to encourage and develop the alliance profession. And so it became kind of a second home for me from a career standpoint, from an intellectual capital standpoint, and from a networking standpoint. So a lot of friends, a lot of good energizing content, and I've loved it. And I think many of our members do, and I hope others will join. Organizationally, we are built upon a fantastic global organization that is worldwide, with over 2,000 members, 16 chapters such as ours, around the world also. And another dimension of that is that we're proud that they're supported by 60 and growing corporations who are active in this area and provide not only financial support to the global organization, but they provide intellectual support, breadth and depth of ways of thinking about things and organizing our profession as we go forward. So it's a great organization to be a member of and part of the family. The Silicon Valley chapter is the oldest, most active, and largest organization within the ASAP family. We have about 300 members representing about 20 companies. We have a wonderful board that is listed here, and it should be, if it's not in your handouts, it should be available at the desk there. And if anybody has questions afterwards about ASAP, feel free to talk to Nimma or myself, or anybody who you see wearing a member or a board member ribbon under their badge. We'd love to talk to you more about ASAP. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is that the Game Changer is our anchor series, and we've had a great deal of fun and interest and engagement with that this year. But we also provide other kinds of more intimate settings for networking and exchange of ideas in professional development workshops, in roundtables, and executive breakfasts and so forth. So stay tuned, and networking events. So stay tuned to hear more about that as we roll out the next year. With that, I want to say that as I introduce Shannon Ryan, that SV AMA has been just absolutely wonderful. A perfect example of how to work with and develop and work with an alliance. Great ideas, very friendly and supportive communications. And it's been a delight, Shannon, to work with your group. And I'm wondering if you come up and tell us a little bit about SV AMA. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Shannon Ryan, and I'm the president of Silicon Valley American Marketing Association. I'm just going to give you a little information about the organization, and it goes likewise. Feel free to find myself or any of the other board members that are here this evening if you want to learn more about our organization after tonight's event. So we're really involved in the marketing, discipline at large. We are one chapter of over 70 chapters within North America. American Marketing Association is the largest marketing organization in North America, and we're very excited to be one of their core chapters. Certainly in Silicon Valley, a lot of things are changing, and so when we had the opportunity to partner with this event, we thought this was going to be a great way to bring some of the things that are rapidly changing within the marketing discipline as we look to find new ways to partner within the organization and develop what we're doing together in a collaborative environment. So there's a couple of things that we do as an organization. One, we have a very large community, not only our members, but our community at large. We put on networking events, we put on educational events that are often balanced as a panel event. We also do some special events in the evenings, and we also do morning forums. So we have a variety of content and networking that we offer our members. And the really great part about being a part of such a large national organization is there's a wealth of resources and their events that they also put on. So we're very fortunate to be backed by such a great organization. One thing we want to share with you this evening is we are currently running a membership special through June 24th. So check it out. There's a lot of advantages for joining, certainly at the localized level, but also the national level. So you can check that out, and you can find more information about the organization as well as our upcoming events at www.svama.org. All right.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say a word about the people that are represented and the companies that they are representing here tonight. One of the things that we love about our gatherings at ASAP with SVAMA is the breadth of companies and perspectives and talents that we bring together. And it's usually a pretty long list. Tonight, we've blown it out. There's over 40 companies represented by the people that have signed up for this event, and that's fantastic for a couple of reasons. One is there's a diversification in the companies from billion-dollar plus, including Cisco, our great sponsor here, to mid-sized companies and a few startups, systems integrators, consultants who represent other companies. So there's a broad range of view of the various segments of the industry. From an industry standpoint, we are focused largely on technology, although I think the SVMA folks have some different perspectives. But given where we are, that is kind of where we've been to. But I'm pleased that tonight we have some people from biopharma, we have the hospitality industry represented. All those things are great. And what's super about that is that brings us, when we get to the discussion period, which we're looking for a very vibrant discussion with a panel and you, I think that'll bring a great sense of perspective from different people who are in different perspectives in the paradigm shift and at different levels of the learning curve as we're moving into the new age and era. So, we're really pleased about that, and with that, let's get going with the panel.
So I'm going to introduce you to our agenda, which will set up how we have asked our panelists to build off of each other in the course of the opening part of this discussion. So when we, as panelists and moderators, we get together and we say, you know, how is it that we want to have a coherent, collective discussion with one another and then with you as a group? How is it that we want to take the rate of change, both at a business, at a process, at a platform, at even from an industry perspective, and how do we want to communicate that? So we decided to communicate it in the following agenda. As you might expect, we wanted to set context. And we'll have the panelists introduce themselves momentarily. But we've asked that Asvin, who is from HCL, who is in a marketing position, ground us in what are the trends, what are the drivers, the digital drivers, and how might we begin to think about what has changed and what hasn't changed, knowing that the two worlds are colliding? And what are some of the tenets that you can take away from that? Then building upon that, we said, Adrian, an esteemed author, a few of you were fortunate enough to get a fantastic book called The 24-Hour Customer, to assimilate, to help us understand what of these patterns are becoming habits. And if they're becoming habits, what's the economic impact of those from an industry perspective, a company perspective, and a practitioner perspective? Us. And then as this is becoming a serious platform-based business models have become serious, not only in the Bay Area, but worldwide, we wanted to have somebody who's in a market-making position, Sherrick Murdoff, from Salesforce's view, and his view as somebody who is charging, enabling ecosystems to work with Salesforce and just enabling the digital ecosystems to get off the ground, to talk to us about what of that is going from habit to automation to being habitualized, and therefore a part of our life for a long time to come. And then from a collaboration standpoint, it's really funny. When we think about the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference, and you look at now who's going there, the paradigm's busting where you have CEOs going because their entire business is dependent upon what the developers agree to do, and software, and the iOS 6 coming out, and then you have the value chains of Apple versus Google that are forming, where people are now declaring their careers based upon which of the ecosystems or value chains they want to be a part of. Well, you know, there's more value chains than just Apple and Google. There's quite a few other ones with what I call the established tech titans. And we've asked Raja, who is our ASAP executive sponsor, thank you for tonight here, to comment on that from both a perspective of a company that's been there for 20 years and running, and from what he might offer for some of you who are in the SMB sector and you're building your own ideas of where you fit in your value chains. So with that agenda, we hope that builds to a point where you can come forward with questions to any of the panelists. You can come forward with questions that you may have multiple panelists, because it's a diversified group, comment upon. So that's the agenda we plan to have. And with that, I say, John, why don't you lead off why don't we have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll lead off with the session itself. So Asvin, please.
Hi, I'm Asvin. I manage marketing for HCL. HCL is a $4 billion IT services company, and I'm responsible for marketing and business development there.
I'm Adrian. My book's The 24-Hour Customer, and it was named Best Business Book of the Year. I was honored by that, by Library Journal, by USA Book News, and also Small Business Trends. Quite honored by that. My day job is that I have a consulting company here in the Valley, Exponential Edge, and we work with a lot of large and small companies on their go-to-market strategy and execution.
Hi, I'm Sherrick Murdoff. I'm from Salesforce. I run our partner development and investments for Salesforce, meaning equity investments in partners, M&A between partners, and also strategic partner recruitment. So important partners we want to get on board with Salesforce in niche markets. So I've been there 2.5 years and very excited to be here. Thank you very much.
So first of all, so there is a value chain outside of Apple, really?
Yes, sir.
That's news to me. I know, isn't it? So I'm Raja Sundaram. Welcome to Cisco. I lead the partner organization for services at Cisco. So much of what I'm going to be talking about today is around go-to-market strategies, not necessarily into marketing, but then I'll bleed into what is a marketing challenge that it poses as well. So really looking for a debate. Welcome again.
Okay, so let's get rolling. Asvin, would you lead us off with a bit of perspective and historical context and the drivers that got us in marketing from where we were, say, in the mid-90s to where we are now as we move through the paradigm shift?
Sure, great, thank you. All right. I don't sit too well, so I'm just going to stand here. And before I got started, I also wanted to thank all of you because you've chosen us over the MBA finals. There are quite a few of us who are tall here, but you're no match for LeBron and Kevin Durant. But thank you for being here. So I'd like to start with a little story, and you have a handout there. Some of the slides, at least one or two of them, are a bit dense, so you could look through them when I come to them. The metaphor, for me, whenever I look at winning a customer, can't be anything different from the Medal of Honor, right? It is the highest honor, and it is obviously something that that anybody in service and active service looks forward to. But if I equate that to trying to win a customer, and all of us have been there, it is sometimes so tough to be able to get a customer and win him over. So I'm trying to equate the metaphor there, and this is the Medal of Honor from the last century. And if you really see the Medal of Honor that is currently given out, there's not too much of a difference, right? And the point being that it has been tough in those days for those professionals to be able to win customers, and it is tough currently to win customers, especially in turbulent times. And it's always been historic that people in that times tend to believe that it is the toughest for them, but with what they knew at that time, it was tough for them too. Having said that, it was easier in one sense at least, right? If you were a soldier of that time, all you needed was a gun, and your extra ancillary was the knife that got attached to the gun so that you could stab him if the person was too close, so you can't shoot him, right? If you compare that to what the soldier of now needs to deal with, right? He or she really needs to look at such complex variables, including coordinating with other people in his or her division. You need to know multiple tools and technologies that you need to be aware of. And for me, it is a great metaphor of where we as marketeers are, right? It is no longer this simple thing that you can do where you just classify it as outbound or inbound, or this is PR, this is partner management. It is a complex set of things that you need to take care of that really enable you to win that customer, win that medal, right? And why are we here? Forrester did this very interesting study on macro trends in technology buying, in what technologists like us are facing. And they came back with 5 technology trends, but they also came back with 4 socioeconomic trends and 3 buyer trends. And while all of us in various news media, etc., have seen various elements of this, ones that are most relevant to us from marketing standpoint, especially concern technology. So technology has really enabled removal of the information asymmetry. That is the reality that we live in. It has also changed the way technology is consumed. So as a service, is ubiquitous now. Smart computing, especially for economies like ours, where there is a huge resource crunch, smart computing and how economies can reinvent themselves is fairly important in the way not only governments look at it, but also specific industries like healthcare, and a lot of other industries will start looking at it. And also this whole power of empowerment, right, which is how does technology enable social interactions, which is where most of the social media and all those interactions are teeing off. While these are important, it's also very important to look at what's happening in the buyer's world. I was speaking to someone earlier, and you moved from a phase where IT was the sole buyer to the CMO or the P&L owner or each of the business being the buyer now than the influencer. So how you sell to them changes, how do you market to them changes. It's a completely different shift to how you go about your entire marketing process. Not only that, IT has shifted from being just a platform to where it is aligned to business to now where it is intertwined with business, right? There is very little differentiation between what is considered business and what is considered technology, because that is a critical driver to how companies can run business. Now, if you pair that up with what is happening in all of our lives, which is our usage of our user experience through social media and other other ways in which we've gotten used to easy consumption of technology, that consumption of technology is now being driven into corporate technology. And whether corporates like it or not, people like you and me are driving saying, if I am looking at my iPhone at home, why do I have to deal with a boring technology at work, right? So these things are changing the way people are thinking about the buying process, and so there's a lot that we need to be thinking collectively together to be able to map the current customer. So what this means for us is, and I found this data fairly interesting because Forrester, and you'll find similar research from Gartner and a few other sources, that there are currently 26 different marketing tactics that are being followed by marketers. Right? It's quite a handful. So not only is the routes to market increasing and ever expanding, you also have an expansion in customer data and explosion in customer data, where it's all about real-time analytics, and you also have the business community and their buying behavior that has changed. Part of which what I explained in the previous slide. So with all of this, what is happening is that there is a big shift happening in marketing investments and marketing budgets. Right? So budgets are changing ever so rapidly in terms of where money is getting spent. And if you see the wagon wheel on the right, marketing operations that used to be considered something that somebody did in a corner is now getting more and more money, primarily because that is becoming the epicenter of where people are prioritizing on their marketing decisions. So when you have a changing environment, when you have flux in the environment, you tend to pull back and think that I need to strategize more on where I'm going to spend my money. I need to prioritize. I need to analyze data. I need to act on data. And marketing operations is increasingly seeing more spend. Right? Two more interesting elements that I came across. The second one is that lead nurturing that used to be someone somewhere. Some people did lead nurturing for a living. That during the recessionary phase and and our current economic times has become fairly important. So it's not only about lead generation, but it is being able to nurture a particular lead. And there again, from the 2008, 2009 days where quantity used to be a way to measure, whether you have enough leads or not, it is really the quality of leads that you have. How do you take them through the process? How do you engage with them with the various marketing tactics that are there, right? Those 26 tactics. So essentially what it's turning out to be is that you're essentially moved from a model where you had a few levers to work with, like the Wright brothers did, to really where your marketing dashboard is looking like the cockpit of a B-52 bomber, and you really are looking at so many dials and so many alarm bells going in different places. Something happening on Twitter, something happening on LinkedIn. There's an issue in PR, etc. That the standard way of how things were approached will not work, and that's part of the journey that we need to evolve to, and so. Today's discussion, and it's similar to what Nimma talked about, is essentially on three things. One is in our ability to assimilate the changing customer behavior. Adrian has done tremendous research in this area, and we look forward to hearing from her on how customer buying behavior, both from a B2B sense, impacts a lot of our lives and what we need to be thinking about. And then, of course, automation. Like I talked about, when you're looking at that B-52 bomber cockpit, you can't be thinking about doing everything manually. So it's about automation. It's about leveraging platforms. And then, it is all about collaboration because, as I mentioned, the business is the buyer. And when business is the buyer, he or she is looking for a solution. They're not looking for products. They're not interested in technology. They're used to consumption as a service. So they're essentially looking for you to come back with a solution that works across different partners, and hence, a battle of integrated value chains, as it is called, right? So before I close my session, I really like something what the great guru Peter Drucker said. He said the great danger in turbulent times, right, is not turbulence itself, but it is to act with yesterday's logic, right? So the whole effort today that we want to have a lively discussion and debate about is how do we learn from each other in trying to use new logic because of the changing customer buying behavior, because of changing technology, and what has happened in the socioeconomic scenario. All right, with this, back to you, John.
Adrian, would you take us to a look on the other side of how the customer buying behaviors relate to the marketing dynamics that we've been talking about?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to advance the slide. I'm on the assimilate part of the agenda. Now, that's an interesting word. Hopefully I won't make an assimilate out of myself. I'm here to talk about customers and what's happening on the other side. As Asvin very eloquently told us about the markets and what's happening with marketing, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening with customers. Now, how many of you think that customer behavior has gotten more complex over the last few years? How many of you feel that it's more complex? Anybody feel that it's less complex, that it's simpler now? I think, so there is. May I ask your thought there? Okay. Okay. Actually, you're bringing up an excellent point. Customers, I think, are more complex, but they want things simple because of the complexity in their life. So that's a great thought and a great comment, and I think we should continue to talk about that as the evening goes on. Customers have gotten more complex, and if you think about the day of the 1950s, I think WWDD. What would Don Draper do? And the question is, he would look at all this complexity. He would look at all these customers that are, how complex. I mean, look, we know the technology. We know that the way to engage customers today. When in Don Draper's day, it was a matter of you just put it out one way, right? And you just do this mass marketing. We all know that story, right? It's all one way. Now it's two-way. All this data is coming back. Customers have multiple channels. They have multiple ways that they want information. They want it simple, as you so eloquently said. And yet, what would Don Draper do? Well, he would say, help, I need geeks to help me figure this out. It's very complex, and he needs to be able to automate this and bring this all together. Now, Sherrick is going to talk a little bit more about the automation side of things. I'm going to talk about the human behavior side of things because it's the combination of the human behavior and the habits that blend with the technology and put all of this on steroids for marketers in today's environment. And so if we think about just level setting, you may say, okay, how do habits fit into people's lives? In Don Draper's day, people would go out and, you could sell something. It was very transactional, right? You could sell something and you were done. Now, we need to build habits. We need those customers to come back and continue to engage with us. If you think about what Facebook is doing, I think in the first Game Changer, I asked, what would the value of Facebook be if people did not return to their ecosystem? What would the value be tomorrow if people did not log on? 0, right? So you'd see a lot more happening than just what happened on the IPO on Wall Street. So it's very dependent on bringing customers back and bringing them into that ecosystem. And I'm going to talk about how digital habits and building digital habits into your ecosystem are critical to your success in this kind of environment. And whether you're doing a marketing campaign, which is a simple campaign, or you're building a platform, having those habits and triggers embedded in. And I'm going to share with you tonight some really interesting new research that I've been doing and some observations that I've had with the number of clients and work that we've been doing as to how you might want to think about this as you build your platforms and your ecosystems. Just to level set for a moment, I wanted to, how many of you have seen the 4-quadrant slide for Timographics framework? Okay, a number of you have and a number of you haven't. Okay, just to level set for a moment, I'm going to walk through that really quickly, and then I'm going to move on to some of the newer material that we have on habits and what that means and how do you build them. Basically, if you think about how people spend their day, you've got the bottom axis, which is the propensity to spend time, which you've got 24 hours a day. And you have the vertical axis, or the y-axis, which is propensity to allocate attention. You've got about 16 waking hours of attention. Everyone has this 4-quadrant grid in your day. And what's happening with today's consumer is that we're allocating our attention among 4 key quadrants. And I'm going to go ahead and walk through them fairly quickly. Time magnets, which is high propensity to spend time, high propensity to allocate attention. These are the things that motivate us. This is why we get lost in playing video games. This is why we like to spend time. These are the things we like to do. And they tend to tap into our motivations. And this is why we lose track of time and we get into a flow. Our career, sometimes at the office. I know sometimes I can be working on something and I go, oh my gosh, where did the time go? That's what happens in that situation. And if you're a marketer and you know and you can tap into those motivations, it's a very powerful position. The second one, which is time savers or convenience, we're going to allocate just enough attention to solve that problem very quickly, to save us a little bit of time, but we're going to move off it fairly quickly. And we want to save time in that kind of situation. FedEx is a good example of something. You know, you're very focused on trying to get that package to your boss overnight, but once that package is sent off, you're on to the next thing. The next quadrant is time minimized. That's where we really don't want to spend any time at all. It's basically price and functionality, and you're moving on to the next thing because we have so many things bombarding us all day long. So those are categories and products that we just say, okay, just give me the price, or I just don't have time to think about this. And then the last decision point, which is time on autopilot. And these are things that tend to be very important, but we don't necessarily want to allocate attention to them. So a good example of that is the bank. The bank's very important. Obviously, they hold our money. But we don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time doing our banking or paying our bills. At least I don't. So I'd rather spend the time in the motivation quadrant with my family or doing something that really is something that motivates me. So that is basically a landscape of how we might want to think about that. Now, habits are unconscious behaviors, and they take up about 45% of our day, according to psychologists. And so if you can think about habits, I mean, who can name a habit in this room that we do? Eat? Yeah, sometimes we eat. We don't even think about what we're eating. Brushing our teeth? That's a manufactured habit, actually. That was something, 100, 200 years ago, people didn't brush their teeth. And that was something that the American Dental Society, the toothpaste companies, everything, that's something we do and we don't think about. But that is actually, and it's a habit that's good for you, obviously, because you don't want, you want to have good dental health. But that's an example of a habit. We get up in the morning, we go through our morning routine, and we don't think about it. Someone had her hand in the back? Yes, exercise a habit. Absolutely, and some of the techniques actually you'll hear about tonight. I can give you an idea. One thing I do, but it just helps. You got to have some triggers to get you to do it. So this is kind of the landscape of what we mean and how we start to think about how people triage their time because they are so busy. Now, if you start to drill down and we start to think about the different types of habits, this is where my research has started to veer from some of the more traditional things we hear about habits. And there are 3 types. First, we have neurohabits. These are habits that etch onto our brain. So like your morning routine, things that we go throughout our day, sometimes eating, it etches onto the I'm just going to call it our lizard brain for lack of saying the fancy term. But basically, it's going to etch into a very basic part of our brain. It's just something we're going to go through and spend our 45% of our day doing. These are very powerful. How many of you get on Google without even thinking about it? I mean, we're often running on a Google search before we even know it. That is a very powerful market position. Because once something is etched into your brain like that, it's very difficult to change it. And that is why Google has maintained such a strong market share. It's very difficult to change that kind of behavior once it's embedded into your daily routine. The second type of habit are neurodigital habits. Now this we start to move into what I'm calling digital habits, number 2 and number 3 on the slide. Neurodigital habits is a combination of etching on the brain, but also reinforcing that with some kind of computer. It could be a sound, it could be something that the computer is doing. And these are very powerful kinds of habits. The third is wired habits. I'm not going to talk too much about wired habits today, but just think of these as set it and forget it. So these are things that you're going to program, and we're going to see more and more of this in our lives as we move ahead into the next decade or so, where we're going to just say, I don't want to spend time on this. I want this robotic vacuum to clean my house, or I want Siri to just go and figure it out and come back to me with an answer. And we're going to start to see a lot more offerings in the market that are just these set it and forget it kinds of background habits, but they don't etch onto our brain. It's not something that we do, but it's etched into our computers and into our personal routines. So those are the 3 types of habits. I wanted to drill down one more and talk a little bit more about traditional habits and the neuro habits. Traditionally, when you think about a habit, it's a do loop. You have a trigger, then you have some kind of activity, and then you have a reward. So if you think about training your dog, and this looks like my dog, you would say sit, the dog would sit, and you give a reward, right? And then what happens after a period of time is you take the reward away. That's called the habit-goal interface. You forget what is, you forget about the reward, but you keep doing it. You'll tell your dog sit, and your dog will sit, right? So this is a very much a do loop, as I call it. I'm an old programmer, so I think of the do loop. You know, it's just, you're just continuously doing the same thing, okay? And those habits are powerful, like the toothbrushing example that we talked about, trying to get people to do that every day. They buy more toothpaste, they buy more toothbrushes. It's good from a marketing perspective, but of course it's also good for our health. Now, getting into neurodigital habits, I'm gonna move ahead. On neurodigital habits, we get into what is a habit ecosystem. And this is really what we see today with a lot of platforms. And this is a very different dynamic in terms of triggers and rewards. So what I have here is concentric circles, which basically represent an ecosystem. So at the very center are your most loyal and customers that are either with you because of inertia or because of loyalty. They're really sticking with you. Those are your closest. And as you move out in the circles, you may have consistent access with some customers. You may have sporadic access with customers. But at first contact, you know, they're going to check you out. I mean, have any of you ever signed up for an internet website or an internet service and never went back? I mean, the internet's littered with that. And what happened and what broke down in that situation is they failed to use the triggers and rewards to pull you into the ecosystem. And it's very important that you start to architect and figure out, you know, how do you want to use triggers and rewards? And you can use not only giving money and prizes and discounts, but also you can use technology, you can use sounds, you can use messaging reminders. Tonight I drove here and on my phone, Twitter had this lovely little email that came in that said, NBC News has a tweet for you. And I looked at it and I'm like, wow, you know, maybe they want to interview me on this article I just wrote. Wow, you know, this is really cool. So I went in and of course I got curious. I went back into the ecosystem, into Twitter. It was just a tweet about some news story that they ran. Now they could have actually customized that and actually taken that reward and made it much more. But the point I'm trying to make is that is an example of a trigger and a reward. Now the reward wasn't very good. I'm not going to be pulled into that one again. But if they had some kind of reward there that actually would benefit me and would be what I need, that actually would pull me into that ecosystem. Now, the big difference here on what happens in a neurodigital ecosystem is the repetitive loop is not the trigger and reward. Remember on the prior slide, we had the do loop, you know, the circular loop. and the trigger and the reward where it each ends. In this case, what's happening with platforms in today's environment is you're using multiple triggers. You're using a menu of triggers and rewards to keep pulling them back into the ecosystem. So you know, I may get that Twitter email, or I may get, you know, you go onto Facebook today. You know, it's like, oh, you can go do this, you can do that, you can watch a movie. You know, I'd like it to do my laundry. But you get the idea. You know, they have all kinds of things to pull you in and bring you back into that environment, because they hold value by keeping you coming back to that ecosystem and building that as a habit, and making the ecosystem a habit as opposed to just the trigger and the reward and the small. So multiple triggers, multiple rewards, as opposed to one trigger, which is sit, and one reward, which might be a treat. You're using a menu here. Now, some of you may be wondering, what are the buying triggers? And getting back to Don Draper. Now, this is where Don was, actually it's kind of funny. Some people were getting upset because they didn't realize Don wasn't a real person. Seriously, I kid you not. It was all over the internet. But anyway, if you think about Don and what he did so well, he innately understood the triggers and the emotional triggers. And this is something that hasn't changed. Just as Asvin was talking about the metals and how he was talking about some things have not changed, certain, you know, love, greed, reward, status, those things haven't changed. So what I'm going to share with you are 5 triggers and ways to think about how do you set those triggers within your ecosystem as you're building out that path in the ecosystem. The first is peers and power. So these are social triggers. This is the example of when you haven't been in Facebook for a while, you'll get an email from them, and it'll say, you know, one of your buddies, Patrick Campbell posted something, you know, on your wall about you. Well, you're going to go in because socially, I know Patrick, and I would go in and I'd say, you know, I want to check and see what Patrick said. So those are very powerful rewards, and that's a lot about how Facebook and a lot of these social networks pull you in. Power is another one, and particularly for those of you, how many of you are B2B marketers here in B2B space? Status in B2B is huge. I mean, you know, people like air badges and rewards and being able to show, hey, I'm doing this, I've got that. You know, it's a good way for them to promote themselves within their company and be able to toot their horn about themselves for potential promotion and raises. And so to the extent that you can get internal competitions and internal rewards, and actually Sherrick's going to talk in a little bit about some of the things they're doing at Salesforce that really help reinforce that. Personal pursuits is another one. You may be curious, like I was curious about the Twitter. You know, what is that? You know, what's NBC News wanting to tweet to me about? You know, so curiosity, mystery, personal, you know, personal health. Those are things that will capture our attention. Prairie dog events. I'm going to just go really quickly. This is when you have a background habit and it breaks. If your computer software breaks, I mean, generally you don't pay attention to your stuff, but if the software on your computer breaks, what happens? You pop up like a prairie dog and you go, oh, maybe I should shop around for some new software, right? Otherwise you wouldn't think about it. So if you can target those prairie dog moments when customers are popping up and maybe thinking about new alternatives, those would be good marketing tactics. Productivity, that's saving time. If you can tell people how to save time, that's going to capture their attention. And then lastly, price. And anybody who uses Groupon could attest to price and all the likes that go on social media. So those 5 Ps are how you can really get the triggers going. And so if you think of your triggers in terms of those 5 Ps, and basically you can build an ecosystem. I'm going to go fairly quickly through a habit formation ecosystem. There's a number of them out there, but Pampers Village is a good example of one. Rather than just selling diapers, Pampers wanted to start engaging with their customers more closely. And what a better way is through the pregnancy process. There's a book out there called What to Expect When You're Expecting. I don't know how many of you have kids or nieces or nephews or sisters that read that. And it goes week by week. here's what's happening to the baby, here's how you're going to feel, and it's a very good process. So what they did is they automated that process, and so they went out to consumers and they said, okay, we'll tell you what's happening this week, but first of all, you have to tell me your due date, because I can't give you the right week, right? And so they have a whole automated system. Now, P&G knows the due date. So what they can do is develop very targeted offers to their audience. They can start to build them into the ecosystem through triggers and rewards of, here's some information that's going to be helpful to you that you're very concerned about right now during week 16. And here's some products that might make sense for you at this point in the game. And of course, as they got closer to the due dates, they could start to give coupons and offers. Now, the one thing Pampers hasn't done yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do this sometime in the future, is to expand this to partners. Because that's what Nike has done with their ecosystem. They don't just sell Nike products on there, they sell a whole bunch of things. Because if you've got the consumers in there, why not? You could be your own ecosystem and you can offer things that people might need in that process. So that's an example of how they pulled into the ecosystem, and they also had rewards for people. So again, different triggers, different rewards, pulling them along the path to kind of continue to keep them coming back. And so lastly, some of you may be saying, well, okay, this is all well and good, but what do I do when I go back to the office tomorrow? Well, what I would suggest to you is go ahead and take your customer journey and start to plot out, where are the triggers in my customer journey? Where are the rewards? And rate those. How strong are they? Or where are we missing places and opportunities where we can maybe build some habits in and really pull them in? And is the mix appropriate with all the different types and triggers and rewards? Are we pulling people back appropriately? Have we built this ecosystem strongly enough to continue to keep them going back? Or do we have leakage in our funnel? Do we have leakage in our system and they're starting to fall away? So with that, I'm going to pass the floor on to Sherrick, who's going to talk about automation and how do we get the geeks on board to help us.
I don't know if that's calling me a geek or not.
No, you're not a geek.
I'll go with that. Actually, in the Valley, it's actually a badge of honor.
It's a compliment.
Exactly. So I'm going to talk briefly about technology because, as Adrian was talking about, the customer buying habits and your digital habits are changing the way that your technology needs to work, right? In fact, it's changing the way your business needs to work. So I used to ask always the question about kind of who's on what social network, and that's kind of a no-brainer anymore. But I am curious, how many of you actually monitor and listen to your public social networks using a product like Radian 6 or something like that? Okay, so not many of you. Well, then this will be an even smaller step probably. How many of you actually measure, or how many actually do Facebook ads? Do you guys place ads in Facebook for any of your companies? Help them do it a little bit? Done some? And then how many of you can actually measure the effectiveness of those ads by click, by like, by transfer, by conversion, et cetera? So those are the types of things we got to be thinking about, which are brand new to most companies. And it's what we call looking at your company, not just the platform and the technology, but really how does your company become a social enterprise? And a social enterprise is enabling the different private social networks, like employee social networks, the public social networks that are talking about your product out there, and then the products that your company wants to put out there, and how are they socially enabled? So let me talk about each one of those briefly. So your employee social networks. How do you engage around an opportunity? How do you socialize within your company to get the right resources to talk about that customer? How do you look at that customer and understand what's their social profile? Not just the company, but the individual. Where are they on LinkedIn? Where are they on Facebook? Where are they on Twitter? Maybe they're not at all. So how do you identify and how do you socialize around that opportunity from a sales perspective? Then how do you service that customer? So how do you swarm together the right resources to service them when there's a problem? How do you react? Does that customer want an answer via Twitter? Do they want an answer via Facebook? And then next, how do you look inside the company and how do you reward your employees and look at the social capabilities of performance management within your company? So, everyone does the annual performance review, right? Everyone loves that time of year. Whether you're filling them out for yourself or for your employees, it's a lovely time of year and everyone looks forward to it. How can you turn that upside down on its head using social capabilities to drive behavior through rewards and badging and leaderboards and real-time responses about a project you just completed, not something that someone's going to forget 12 months from now. So those employee and private social networks are really important in enabling the company to evolve into being a social enterprise. Next, the public social networks, right? We all know that every company, no matter who you are, someone is talking about you on the internet. Someone's talking about you on Facebook and Twitter. They're checking in on Foursquare. They're doing something about your organization. And if you're not listening to that today, you really need to be listening to that today. And whether you do it in a Google alert and keep it simple, or you use something like Radian6 where you've got all types of behavior monitoring and understanding sentiment about what is actually being said about you. So when you run a campaign, you can see what was the effect of that campaign and what did people think about that in the ecosystem. I mean, Don Draper would love that because you would get real-time feedback without having to do focus groups. And then next, you got to think about, within that public social networks, what kind of campaigns are you going to run inside there? So if you're going to run a campaign within Facebook, it's not just running an ad. It's about running creative environments within Facebook. It's building applications that connect you and get you inside of that and get you interacting with your Facebook page, right? Do you realize that Coca-Cola actually has more hits and spends more money now on their Facebook page than they do on their own website? Because that's where the people are going. So you need to look at how do you monetize that? How do you measure that? How can you get down to the click level within Facebook of a conversion of a like versus the conversion of a retweet in Twitter? And how do you compare those and figure out where am I going to spend my money? Is it going to be, I get more clicks in Twitter, but I get less conversion, but I get higher conversion in Facebook, but I get fewer clicks. So then that will influence how you spend your money and how you measure your campaigns. So those are very important ways to look at how you market and how you go after those public social networks. And then lastly, from a true platform perspective, is from a product, and not just application development. I mean, that's having a platform where you could build true applications that are then socially enabled, not just what language are you using, Java and Ruby, et cetera, but then how are they automatically socially enabled? So they come with feeds and groups and profiles and all the things you're used to using in Facebook and Twitter, but are automatically enabled when you build a custom app. So no matter what it is, you build a procurement app, you build MRP, whatever you want to build, it's custom. It's automatically socially enabled for within your organization. So that's from a technology perspective, but then you got to think about the products that you may build, so hard goods. So, each of us have friends on Facebook or friends on Twitter. Within, for instance, Salesforce, an account could be your friend, an opportunity can be your friend. But why can't you step out of that world and look at, why can't a car be your friend? So Toyota Friend is a brand we created for Toyota. The car is literally on your social network inside your company, and you actually can speak to your car, friend your car, it friends your service guy, it friends your sales guy, et cetera. Coke Style, same thing. Why can't a vending machine, why can't you walk up to a vending machine and actually knows who you are before you get there and can tell you, gee, do you want your vanilla Diet Coke again, Sherrick? That'd be great. Click, done. Maybe I just do it from my phone, right? Can a printer be your friend? So think about all those things that socially you can connect with, and your social profile can actually impact your engagement with that product. So that's very important to have the type of technology environment that supports the changing buying habits, the changing user habits that are going out there, because that's the way people are starting to think. So keep it brief.
My turn?
Sure.
Excellent. So I have nothing to do with user behavior or marketing. So I'm just going to talk about this from a go-to-market standpoint, right? So one of the interesting things that we are observing, many of you know this in the industry, is the changing customer needs. And I think that was brought up a couple of times earlier. So a couple of things that we see from an IT side, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about Cisco in my examples, but it's occurring whether you're in Juniper or HP, same story. Which is customers are saying, listen, I don't want to buy technology the way I've been consuming it in the past. Particularly within it, I don't want to buy services the way I've traditionally bought them. And I would like to consume it the way I want it with flexible consumption models. Right? That's becoming a theme. The question then is, how do you deliver an outcome to this customer? So that's the challenge. And so one of the things that we started thinking about as we went through this journey was we found that traditional approach to services, hiring more people, really, it's highly people, it's very heavy OpEx around people. It's not something that we could scale to. So we decided that we needed to do more software-based stuff. So then I'll bring up back into it the marketing challenge to go with it in a minute. What is also important to understand about us is that there's no right or wrong. HP has, whatever, 260,000 people in services. We have like 10,000. And we predominantly go through partners. We have a very large ecosystem, all the way from consulting partners, the likes of Accenture, to Jovar, right? And large system integrators and everyone else in between. So how do you go to market with these partners? So you can't hire a lot of people because then you start competing with them. And it's important because if you just purely look at economics, partners make their money in services, right? 40 to 50% of their portfolio is services, 70% of their profitability is services. If that's the case, what do you do? So we decided that we're going to do this through software. Well, how does it work? It's actually pretty simple. So we used Facebook as examples earlier. All you have to do is think about it. So I went to Berkeley, so it's in my network, and I hit the like button on San Jose Earthquakes, my local favorite soccer team. And so they keep, every time I log in on the top right-hand corner, they keep selling me scarves and shirts, right? And so all of you have experienced that. That's what a smart service is. It fundamentally takes some information about you, connects it with some products, ties it back to you. One of the other things that you're also beginning to see in services is this trend towards automation. More analytics, more smart analytics. Here's a good example. My first car was a 71 Chevy Citation. I used it to drive from Oklahoma to California, right? So I needed a car. So if I needed to fix something in it, open it, I had a manual, I would do something with it. Today in my car, the moment I open it, I don't know what the heck to look at because it's all sealed, right? But think about what happened in the ecosystem. What happened in the ecosystem is a BMW today has 200 million lines of code. So no human can service it anymore. All you have to do is plug it in, and the dealer network started figuring out, okay, if I can connect back to the dealer, get intelligence back, I can service the car. So the ones who did this survived, and the others fundamentally became the local garage who fixes your tires, right? And so it's the same trend that is beginning to happen in services, and it fits the as a service model. How do you consume services? So what we decided was, if we can know what's happening in the network, and all the other devices, video and voice and everything else, we can provide intelligence back to the partner as to what's happening in the network. So that's all the service does. So you're now moving away from a high people-oriented service to more software-based intelligence, but this time back to a partner. So the opportunity the partner really has is take that knowledge, the intelligence, just the way the car dealer did, and begin to add value around it. Now you can begin to see the journey towards delivering an outcome. What is also interesting at the same time is once you get this analytics and intelligence, you can now address different buying centers. Let me give you an example. So if you know that you've benchmarked the top 50 banks in the world, and you know this one bank sucks, right? Lower left-hand corner quadrant. You no longer go to the traditional IT buying center. You can actually go to the chief security officer or the chief whatever, right? A CFO who signed Sarbanes-Oxley, and now that is your new buying center. You basically say, all of the banks there, you suck, bottom left-hand corner. Would you like to know how to get there, right? It makes it for an easier sale than the simplified aspect, right? As opposed to saying, let me tell you why we're better than Juniper or HP or Huawei. They all look the same. The other thing that we are also observing is that, I don't know, many of you, so I spoke to some of you earlier, Gartner study, other than IT, most of the money resides with CMO, right? And so half the audience here knows that you cannot go to a CMO and try to explain why the heck what a router is and what it does, right? And so it's got to be an outcome-based story. I know. Yeah, I tried. Didn't work at Merrill Lynch many, many years ago. What happens is you're now getting to an outcome. What also it begins to do is begins to attract an ecosystem to deliver a solution. Because now if it's software, then it's APIs, and I think Sherrick said about some standards, right? I'm not an IT guy, unfortunately. You're beginning to attract an ecosystem that develops around it. Right? As in China last week, Angry Birds for education, right? And that ties into a platform that now delivers digital education service, remote education service, and so on. So you begin to get into that kind of a game, which is kind of where we see, at least in our space, the platform evolving to. It begins to address the as-a-service model. Now, what are the marketing challenges to it? A couple of interesting things. The first one is how do you create buying preference, right? Let's start with that. First of all, you got to tell them what the heck it is, and try to explain this. And it's pretty difficult, because they're used to seeing us as a vendor come in and talk about, like, guess what? Our stuff runs faster than blah, blah, right? We had Richard Branson on one of our ads that says, what would you do with 16 terabytes or whatever it is? And he had an answer. So those kinds of ads, now we're coming back and saying, CMO, guess what? You will be able to better demand gen, da-da-da. And they're looking at us going, but your Cisco systems, what the heck? And so it's the question of how do you influence the customer, which is a challenge. Different buying centers, not the traditional IT who know us, love us, right? And at the same time, how do we go through analysts, AR and PR? They become that much more important than they did in the past, right? Because now you're painting a strategy. When they call in and say, who's the vendor who I need to use in order to get this as a service, to get my sales force more optimized, then you're able to influence that. The second challenge, and we get kind of getting there, right? The second challenge is preference. Now, what you have to understand is from a partner and customer standpoint, if we are embedded into a partner solution, there's stickiness. Without it, you're abstracted. Here's a good one. I remember a very large partner of ours tell a customer who wanted to manage something, said, does it really matter which vendor I use to deliver that solution to you? Right? You get abstracted out extremely fast. One of the what we found was software intellectual capital through software gives you a level of stickiness, but the question is, it also gives you a lot of analytics. What is going to be important for us, which we're really trying to solve right now, is that if I give that analytics to a partner, I want it to be very targeted. Meaning I want to be able to go to a partner and say, customer X, they have this problem based on all the analytics that we see. Sell this, right? Don't try to just sell this. Do you have it in your portfolio? Great, go for it. If you don't have it in your portfolio, we have a service that you can deliver, or some other partner in the ecosystem has a service that you can deliver. We haven't reached that level of sophistication yet, but we're trying to correlate the analytics that come back on the B2B level, just go figure out how we want to do that. Because I just don't want to tell a partner, go make more money. I've actually tasked my marketing team to go sort out what kind of analytics come back and how do I point back to the partner, because it's really about the partner making more money. So that's kind of where we are, and I think what is interesting is that we're going to see more and more of these, of analytics, smart, and automation across the industry. The next question is, marketeers, what rich data is going to come for you from a B2B standpoint, or what do you want to do with it? And so these are some of the things that we're trying to sort out, which is how do you create that preference to the customer, create the brand preference for the partner, and leads and so on. We've done creative things in the past. There are a couple of folks in the audience. We've been able to mash up what the customer need is, and you can sit in a Starbucks in Singapore, it'll map out in your iPad, like, who the 5 customers 5 miles from you and what to sell into them, and here's the package. You need help on it, click. There's a call center that'll help you put that package together. We've done those kinds of things, which are not pretty innovative in the industry, right? And it's pretty common. The next trick for us is going to be, how do we take these analytics and what on earth do we do with it? Because that's going to make it that much more powerful than saying, here are the 5 customers, sharp pull, go for it. To say, here are the 5 customers, sell this, right? And you know you're going to make a sale and call these people because this is their pain point. Now, when you start thinking about it in FSI or in healthcare, whether it's HIPAA compliance, by the way, all of you marketers know this, nothing sells more than fear, right? So go in and say HIPAA compliance or SOX compliance, and here's what you need. I mean, based on industry standards, I mean, you can't get better than that. So that's our story. That's kind of how we're thinking about this. This is a challenge that we face.
Thank you, Raja. Okay, so whether it be from Asvin, Adrian, Sherrick, or Raja, I hope that was informative, first of all. Second, this Chevron model that Adrian has shared, or there are other ones that are quite comparable that are out there, I encourage you to look at them and rethink your role as a marketer. I want to hit on 3 quick points, and while we do that, I want you to think about what your questions are, because we're at that section of the program. And how you can ask the questions is in one of 2 ways. You can go to the mic, which is put in front of a pillar. It looks more like an interrogation position. Or more customized. We have 2 roving mics, and if you raise your hand, Shelley, who's been fabulous through and through, will get one to you. So let me set Leslie's already going. Okay, here we go. Number 1, in terms of the day work that John or I do, I cannot stress enough how many CEOs are looking at their business boundaries and saying, I know I got it wrong, right? You see public debates about whether GM or Ford understands how to use Facebook that was used earlier is that valuable retail space. It is a paramount, it is in the first 3 agenda items of a CEO discussion, regardless of industry, regardless of size. There is a recognition going on, which is it's moving, and I'm not sure where I stand. Second, again, to the point of the frameworks, the leverage of the consumer, the leverage of your business buyer, and the leverage of your partner channel ecosystem has never been stronger, because they can, in any one of those, I guess call it degrees, can self-assemble, can cross-check on a sense of happiness or dissatisfaction of, are you learning from me or not, even if you got the first sale? And they can send a resounding negative result back. And that is the point about fear. Marketers, in particular, are in a unique position to be the aggregators of customer information, to be the organizers of communities, whether it's for new product development or for customer support. And one of the reasons is because the platform has become understandable, whether you're in IT or not. It's about the business intuition that you want to perpetuate out of it. Okay, and third, we come from various demographics here, but there's one thing about the Silicon Valley, which is that paranoia that began with Intel and how it perpetuated through the decades of only the paranoid survive is very alive and well. And as we travel the country, as we travel the world, this fellow was in an earthquake in Taipei just a few days ago. As we travel the world, your ability to be somebody who is working in the valley and thinking these things, no matter how many times you get it wrong, keep trialing it, keep digitally testing it. You have a market leader's role, and we encourage you to take it. So with that, I hope that you have some questions, and I know Leslie has got a question. So if we could get the mics to those people, we will get started. Thank you. Go ahead.
This question is for Asvin and Adrian, and it's about buying behavior and how you might translate that for the partner usage, because one of the things I'm hearing all the panelists say is that automation is our friend. So from the vendor side, as a B2B marketer, how do I translate that kind of buying behavior wisdom for partner usage? Do I have to embed it in the services that I provide for my partners to use? Or is there some kind of education that needs to happen on the partner, for me, to the partner side? So basically, I'm looking for relevancy. So if both of you could give your perspective, that'd be great.
So, the first thing is that the automation and collaboration aspects are still in their infancy. What we're increasingly seeing is that there are a lot of these digital habits that companies need to pick up on their own. I'll give you an example. There's increasing evidence that you should be able to track your customer, looking for data related to a particular problem that they have at watering holes that may be your website or maybe common websites that give them information related to a particular problem that they have. They do not want to they do not want to tell who they are at that point in time. They do not want you as a vendor to approach them at that point in time, but they are collecting information and making up their mind with respect to particular vendors. Then they move on to a phase where they download a white paper by giving out some information, or there's someone down the hierarchy who collects some data related to, that gives you an idea that there's something happening at a particular place. All of this, in some sense, is automated. So you have marketing automation software that allows you to track this, allows you to start building an image of who this potential buyer is. What is not yet available now, which is where I think Salesforce is putting a lot of their efforts, is how do you try and create an environment that allows sharing of data that is possible between two partners, or how do you then bring it to a stage where buying is made possible? But there's definitely there is an offline method in which you can decide that there's a certain set of customers that you will work with a single partner, and there's a certain set of other customers or products or some matrix that you have that is offline. So you look at the automated data and online data that you're receiving and share it offline with that partner to build programs specifically for a particular prospect. Does that answer your question? But we've not evolved to that stage where it is happening in an automated manner.
Yeah, I think what you're describing, in many ways, it's handled through an API process, through, say, having a platform. If you think about Apple and what they're doing in their ecosystem, and they have people interacting and they're controlling it, or Google, they're controlling it through their API process. It's a way to bring some form to that, but are we where we need to be, and are we where we need to be on a B2B side? If you start thinking about sophisticated enterprise systems, not there, and that's where I think we're going to need some kind of automation, but maybe on a small scale. And I'd be interested in it if anybody's seen this in a room. I could see in a small scale, for example, if you have a strategic partner initiative, maybe building a joint initiative ecosystem where the two partners are working together, and but you have to work out, who gets what, and there's a lot of engagement that needs to be worked out to make something like that work. What traditionally has worked best, though, has been one person has the ecosystem, or one company, has the ecosystem, and then they drive it for the rest of the ecosystem, which that's where we are today. But in the future, it would be really nice to start seeing more joint ecosystems.
Yeah, I'll comment on that too, which is, when we released Chatter, which is our internal social networking environment, right? So it looks and acts like Facebook, and you interact within the company. The number one requirement that came out of that, as everyone said, this is great, was now how do I talk to someone outside my company, right? And how do I interact with partners? How do I interact with other people? And so Chatter groups became important, and then Chatter groups with customers. And so now we have it so you can invite people in. In fact, we were collaborating a little bit. We'll get better at it, but within this team, all within a Chatter organization within the Salesforce organization. So we were able to contribute across 6 different companies into one group in a collaboration environment where you could post the documents and comment on them, et cetera. And so we're scratching the surface. Next comes community. So now that makes it easier. And so the same way you participate in a LinkedIn community, you can control that then on your own and create your own community for your own partner ecosystem to go to market together. And that's where we're seeing a huge demand for that, and we're rapidly trying to do more of that because we saw that right away. It was just immediate need.
Do we have a mic to the front? Thank you, Shelley.
Question for Raja. You spoke about enabling your partners in terms of conversation with the end customer. Let's say, for example, as a CMO versus an IT person. How are you enabling customized conversations? Because obviously, within a given buying process, you've got influencers in different functions. So are you enabling customized conversations for, say, CMO versus CFO, IT people? How is that all working?
Yeah,
with your partners?
we're actually, honestly, just beginning the journey. So what we found was that it was easy for us, I'll tell you the hard one in a minute, it was easy for us to say FSI, because they're standards, or HIPAA, or healthcare, they're standards, to begin to say, what are the real care-abouts? If those are the care-abouts, what do I have in analytics that begins to understand where that customer is compared to everybody else in the industry, right? And so that makes for a meaningful conversation. But the ability, therefore, which is the next challenge, is the ability to, therefore, to take that and make that into personalized conversations to various buying. We haven't reached that level of maturity yet. What we found works. There are few companies that do it. Salesforce does that. SAP, SDN does that. We haven't. What we found works is the ability to pick certain verticals, right? Like we said, healthcare, energy, smart grid, those kinds of things. We're able to have those kinds of conversations because just about every buying center within it looks at same type of outcome. If that similarity exists, then it works. But the ability to then take our technology, whatever, as an outcome and have a conversation, that's what Asvin was saying. We don't have that level of sophistication yet. And those of you know, we're not traditionally the best marketing company in the planet, so any idea is welcome.
I'll just add a point, till the next question comes. One of the ways that you could think about doing it is every function related in a particular industry, like to flock together. So the CMOs of generally all CMOs like to get together, but they also, if they are from financial services industry and they're geographically together, tend to flock more than the others. So if you treat each of these silos and give them what they want, but you really look at areas where each of those CMOs or the CFO or the, or the CEO is going, then you'd be able to, create a picture that is happening across various buying centers of a particular company. Like he mentioned, it's not automated, but you could still step back, and that is the role of marketing operations. Step back and look what's happening here with respect to this company. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 happening together. So there's definitely something happening. So let's push it up the priority list and do something about it and talk about sales enablement and talk to sales, etc.
I'll tell you one other way that works, but not in the United States, which I was mentioning to somebody else. It was pretty surprising. I was in Greater China last week, in Taiwan, middle of the week till Sunday, and every partner I would go and meet with who are in a similar industry would ask whether I was on Facebook, particularly in Taiwan, right? And so I would say I was, and my Facebook for me is really about my dogs and my travel, and they would add me right there. They would look at my business card, they would add me, right? Which I thought was bizarre, right? And so once is an incident, twice a coincidence, right? 2 times before it became a pattern. Obviously, the question was like, what the heck is happening? What is interesting is I found, which going back to what he said, what I found was that business gets done through Facebook. This intent around and knowledge gets transferred through Facebook because, as Asvin said, it's accessible and it also appears personalized, even though it's not. Right? And so what I found was that our salespeople and people within the industry are all friends on Facebook, and they're all selling into semiconductor, right? TSMC and all these companies, right? Foxconn and all that. And so that's how they are communicating business. So the boundaries is blurred. What I found, which is interesting, if I want to go into the OEM side, right, in Taiwan, I have a list of people who have sent me, who want to be my friends. All I have to do is click, And then I suddenly become friends with people who have access into the semiconductor. So I found that happening. I haven't seen that in the United States, but that was, yeah, it was bizarre but interesting as well. So the boundaries are blurred.
Social.
Right. You wanted me to tell stories, right? Is it working for you?
I love the 71 car story.
That's the only other value that I add. Nothing else.
Other questions, please.
I was just going to comment. Oh, if you got a question, go ahead.
I don't want to be marketed to. And there's a fine line between irritation, not being recognized as a unique snowflake, and being seen as a trusted advisor when I'm marketing to somebody. And the other thing that is most likely also challenged in most of the organization, the lifespan of a CMO is 2 times the pregnancy of Pampers life cycle. So you have to have a lot of stamina, you have to have a lot of consistency, you have to look at the life cycle and the traditional behavior, whether you're a technology evangelist or late majority, whatever have you. How do you combine all of this into an integrated value chain and into an integrated marketing campaign that is not seen as a marketing campaign, but more of a trusted advisor campaign?
So I'll take a shot, and it's a great question because the other side of the cockpit that you didn't see, there are still pilots for flying the plane, right? So similarly, I don't think, at least from a B2B perspective, there'll be such level of automation that there can be automated responses because there's always nuance to conversations. So I think the answer is that there will always be. So that is the journey of the marketer, right? So instead of looking at specific marketing tactics that need to be focused on, if you are focused on really understanding what the customer is about and their buying pattern is about, and really looking at those dials, those marketing dashboards that you're getting back from, the tools that you're using, your marketing automation tool, your CRM, your social media monitoring tool, your web analytics, and you're able to construct a story that you're able to drive a sale is one value, number one. Number two is that it's a subtle line. There's no right or wrong answer. There will be people who will make missteps and learn from that. But it is the nuance of how a human being will interact and hence be able to influence a customer's buying behavior. I mean, there are umpteen instances of automation causing customers to get irritated because, like I mentioned, we are human beings too as marketers, but there is a fine line where and even in the customer buying process, there are particular areas in the buying process where even if you know that a particular customer is looking out, if you mention to him at that moment that I know that you're looking out for this, you've lost the customer, right? And that is what we need to evolve to in terms of our understanding. And how do we look at, and this is an easier challenge. The bigger challenge is, how do you look at creating scale of these interactions when you have automated data that is coming in real time is where we need to evolve to, right? So,
can I go for it?
No, go ahead.
I have a story while you're thinking about this. Ari, you are a unique snowflake. Well, having said that, I'll tell you one thing that I'm beginning to see, right? I do believe there's some level to platform integration around this in terms of getting that analytics. So I can tell you how it works, but I'll tell you what to watch out for. One of the coolest things that's out there is after 1924, the first 3-cylinder car is in the market in Europe. Just started. It's by Ford. Okay, 3-cylinder car, fuel efficiency, small, can side park in London streets. But what's unique about it is that right next to the steering wheel is a USB port. Okay, and Ford will ship you your upgrades on the USB port. Okay, so all you have to do is plug in the key and you've got software's upgraded, right? We already established 200 million lines of code, right? It's all software. I was told by the Ford people that that car has more lines of code in it than the Boeing Dreamliner. And they're not kidding. What is unique about it is if the dashboard is digital, and I know what I'm using, and they know what I'm using, then all they need to do, and it's touch whatever, is completely customized so that although I'm driving a 3-cylinder Ford, I'm a unique snowflake, right? And now think about it, because of the analytics that they're going to get, they're going to make that experience completely unique to every single driver. Meaning I would like NPR as I come in the morning and I start NPR plays, or that's the first button that's there on the right-hand corner, right? As opposed to air or something like that. It's that. And now if they're able to do that and capture that kind, now watch 3 years from now, when the upgrade cycle kicks in, they're going to sell you something else. The Explorer or something. I don't know, but you get the point, right? But it's the analytics. But I do believe now that more now than ever that it has to be integrated into some kind of a platform in the value chain, which is Leslie your question as well. Because I believe that's the only way to go, because that's where you begin to get analytics. Yeah, can I say one other thing, please? So, one of the lead analysts at Gartner says if you're not born in the cloud company, who tracks partners of all types, right? Says if you're not born in the cloud firm, first fire your customers, then fire your salespeople, right? And then fire your partners. That's what she says. Obviously, we can do that. So I think it's a journey. I think the opportunity we have, the way we are beginning to do that is two things. Number one, I'm beginning to see that, and it's not just us, HP is brilliant at this, to go out and do joint calls, partner pick preference, right? Say here are the 5 that I'm going to within a region, and begin the journey. And it seems to be a joint learning experience because the partner knows more about the vertical than the firm does, right? So it's not just a one-side, unidirectional, right? And so you begin that journey that way. And the next question is, it goes into intellectual property. How much are you going to capture about what the partner knows, and how do you then replicate it in some other part of the world in a way that people understand how to make money with it? Not here's the case study, because case study is lovely because it's lovely to read, but you don't do anything actionable with it, right? How do you make that actionable to have people make investments? So we are in that phase. And now we are trying to do okay, that's great, but how do I take that success in the United States to China and have someone in Hangzhou make that investment, reading that whatever, and do something with it and make money? And we are on that journey, and we haven't solved it yet. So this session, joint ASAP and SVMA next year, I'll have the story on how the heck we solved it.
If I could add one element to this response, and I'll bring it back to if you are in a marketing function with an anchor company in an ecosystem, what we are seeing is that the marketing function has decided that it is going to market for the whole ecosystem. So whereas the partner may have a better sense of what the customer segment is looking for, or the community is seeking, the ability to get the real-time information as a service from the anchor, like an HP in an ecosystem, is now being viewed as an asset, and the partner therefore has an increasing loyalty, because the cost of getting the data, the resources to interpret the data, it's prohibitive for a company that's smaller or in medium size or in high growth phase. So I think you may want to comment, Adrian, about FedEx, and you hit that earlier on, but they're doing just that with their information.
Yeah, I actually was going to use a different example. I'd like to come back to FedEx because I wanted to finish the thought here that I had. There's a case in my book on a company here in the Valley that makes antivirus software, and they were in the very same boat of, how do I get in? How do I get to this customer when they think my product's a commodity, and my sales reps all, are struggling to get the attention of the CIO. And what they built in this case was a thought leadership initiative having to do with risk for their IT organization. And it initially started very small. They would go to their users groups, and they would they worked out this whole survey on, how are you stacking up relative to these, they started small, 18 areas of risk, and they had to give, speaking of triggers and rewards, they had to give them gift cards, and they had to, they got, out of goodwill, they got them to answer this. After about 400 responses in this database, the IT managers could start to measure themselves against other people in the industry having to do with risk. They now have probably, well, at the time I wrote my book, there were 1,400 companies in the database, so they could start to segment by industry. They could start, and here was a case where now the CIO was calling them in. They were saying, hey, I want to know about this. They didn't want to come and talk about antivirus software. They wanted to talk about risk. And so here is a case where this database, and it grew, and they could start to develop marketing messages for their customers in terms of here's what the CIOs are thinking as it pertains to this. Here's a trend that we're seeing. And they could check back in with them and continue them with that habit. The other thing that they could do is they got feedback from them that they could put into their products. It also gave them ideas of who to partner with, because obviously to deliver all of this, they couldn't deliver everything in that value chain, but it was a way for them to bring the partners through that ecosystem and also be able to sell higher in the organization and get the attention that they needed. And they were able to, like I said, come up with thought leaderships. They do a quarterly thought leadership on what's happening with risk, with IT risk, and what's on the minds of the CIOs, and they're also able to see where the needs are. So this was a way that they used automation to do this, and it was a way for them to really go in as a trusted advisor as opposed to coming in and just hawking their product.
One comment I wanted to share that was, that unique snowflake idea is, how do you understand who you are? How do I find out about you ahead of time? So if you're someone I want to sell to, I need to know, how do you interact in the ecosystem? Do you use LinkedIn? Do you use Twitter? Do you use Facebook? If you don't use any of those things, I'm not going to try to friend you on Facebook, right? If you're prolific on Twitter and you've got 1 million followers, now I know more about you, and I can figure out, well, maybe that's a way to engage and just share information via Twitter, not try to sell you something through Twitter, but engage with you, engage in a conversation. If you're servicing someone and they complain about you on Twitter, right? Well, you answer them back on Twitter. You don't send them an email. You answer them back on Twitter. Comcast does a fantastic thing with that. Short story I like to tell is I complain about Comcast once in a while. They're a great company in some ways, and sometimes they're not. And so I was tweeting about them, about how I wasn't happy with them at all. And they came back to me right away with a tweet, right? Geez, what can we do? How do we help you? We'll send someone out, whatever. And then 2 months later, I called in about something wasn't working again. And while I was on the phone with the customer service rep, they said, oh, did we successfully answer your problem you reported through Twitter? And I was like, whoa, that's kind of strange. But they connected the dots. They had known from my email what my Twitter handle was. And so now they got a social profile of me, and they knew how to engage me. They knew that I used Twitter, so they asked me about that during the phone call. And to me, that was a little bit scary, but also personal, right? They knew exactly much more about me. And I think you've got to really pay attention to as much as you can gather the data, but either gather the data ahead of time or respond to people through the medium that they want to be responded to. If they call you by the phone, don't answer on Twitter. If they come through Twitter, don't send them an email. I mean, you got to respond in those kind of mechanisms and listen to what the customer's trying to do.
Please.
Another question.
Can we repeat the question?
So there's two concepts that the gentleman has asked of the panel, and one is what is the rate of the increase in co-creation taking? Sure. Did everyone hear that? Okay, good. Anyone want to speak to that?
If not,
it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic.
So I can comment on the first matter firsthand, and I'll speak from a PwC perspective, which is the day work. We believe that we as a society are on a major upturn with respect to co-creation in every aspect of life. I think we heard many examples about how we are recreating. We are working with companies on going back to that incubation function, so there is a constant flow. There is a lot of how you use, to Sherrick's point about the social enterprise, how you reward those who contribute ideas, and then you reward those even more for those that are willing to go into a co-creation mode, often within an industry, within a company, within a value chain. I would expect processes to begin to expose themselves, performance management processes along those lines. So that's one thing we're seeing. It's fairly common. I'm not as familiar with the open innovation side of your question.
So let me, I'm sorry, can you give us the same question? Can you give me some clarity on what you mean by open innovation, please? Got it.
Well, there are some platforms out there today. I don't know how to link it to the audience at this point, but I'm thinking of things like 99 Designs, where you could go out and you could say, I have a contest for coming up with new logos or whatever, and you get everybody on the planet to co-create and develop for you. There's those kind of things. I haven't seen, I'm trying to think of examples where I've seen that done by, that's the company, 99 Designs. I haven't seen that. But it's an interesting concept. Are there corporations? I mean, Legos does some things in those areas with customers, trying to get sets and get that community coming up with new ways of building Lego models and things like that.
If that's your interest area, we can follow up on that offline in terms of practitioners who are focused on co-creation particularly. So everyone, we are, yes, Leslie.
We've got a couple of great case studies like that from past ASAP summits. So I know that the STAR program, there's some great DAO case studies about co-creation, and also how they were able to take that and co-market it together, both together as individual companies, but also some of them actually went off and created their own company together so that they could take it together. So, if you want to send an email to us, we're happy to provide some of those.
Thank you, Leslie. So we are at the point where we are going to wrap up the event, in part because we are going to get demiked. As we do that, I would like to ask John to say our thank yous to our panelists and provide our gifts as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Will we be here for
Angie,
questions?
Yes, for those of you that are willing, that wish to go longer, a few of us will be going over there and just extending it until you feel like we've had enough Q&A.
Really? Okay. Oh, you have, okay. Shannon, would you join me in thanking the panel and passing out some gifts?
I get a tombstone?
Thank you very much. This was excellent. I enjoyed it. I hope the audience here did and learned as much as I did. For your efforts, this is a token, but we appreciate your help. And Shannon has something also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a special thank you to Raja for hosting.
Hey, thank you, Shannon.
Very nice. Thank you.
Okay, so again, as we wrap,
we have one more.
I'm sorry.
For Shelley.
Oh, that's right.
Where's
Is Shelley still here? Where are you, Shelley?
This is for you. Oh, okay. This is a person without whom which. Thank you. I think you had a few concluding remarks, but thank you again. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope you did also.
Okay. So number one is you have on the screen when SV, AMA, and ASAP will welcome you to come back together. That'll be a lot more casual for those of you who like baseball. We're going to be on in August 22nd. We are talking about another joint event on a business and IT integrated topic, so look for that perhaps in the fall. I got to do this, right, given what the topic we talked about. You have this in the paper slides. I think you were going to get a survey sent to you by email, is that right? Or just email, within 30 minutes of this program. If you respond to it, we will also send you the deck that we discussed tonight electronically for your consumption. As far as a personal thank you, here it is. You know, we as a chapter have strived to engage in a topic where we're learning from each other. It feels like it is happening, but to the very first thing I said, we want to learn from you. So if you choose to complete the survey, all constructive comments, please, around the format, around the timing, around the topics, bring them on, and particularly around the topics, because we're, to use Asvin's metaphor, we're reloading for next fall and the winter. With that, again, thank you very much. For those of you that want to continue, we'll be over there for a few more minutes. Thank you.